Hi everyone, I'm Paula from AFM.aero. Welcome to Pilot Training Connect podcast by AFM, where we talk about the important developments in the pilot training industry. Every week, we will invite one industry leader to sit down with us and talk about these topics. This week, we have Max from AFM.aero to talk about the brand and give insights about the pilot training industry. I'm gonna pass on the mic to him so he can introduce himself.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Paula. Thank you also for hosting this first edition of this podcast and this pilot training industry leadership interview series that we're looking to conduct. So my name is Maximillian Buerger, and I'm the managing director of AFM.aero, which is a market intelligence platform and advisory company for the pilot training industry. So it is specifically a platform where organizations and individuals can get up-to-date information of the latest trends and developments within the pilot training industry, as well as get access to industry experts on a whole broad range of topics to optimize and improve their pilot training organization, or if their suppliers, their strategy and approach to the whole sector. So yeah, thank you very much for hosting this first edition, and I look forward to many more episodes.
Thank you for that information, Max. If you want to learn more about AFM, please visit afm.aero. And if you want to know more about Max, you can visit his LinkedIn account. He is sort of a LinkedIn influencer, so just visit him or send him a message. So let us move on to our question and answer for portion. For our first question, what is AFM?
So AFM.aero, we really envisioned as being a platform where anyone who is interested or operating in the pilot training industry can go to find the latest information on trends and developments within this industry, as well as get access to industry experts that we have within our team and within our network. So currently on the market intelligence side, so on the staying up to date with the latest developments in trend in the pilot training industry, we have over 1,000 updates that have happened in the pilot training industry since late last year. And since we soft launched, we really had a great reception of the industry, which was kind of looking for a platform where they can get information on the latest trends and developments within this industry.
Thank you, Max. So, why did you decided to establish AFM in the middle of the pandemic? What are the challenges that you experienced building another platform?
Yeah. So as a group, we actually have another platform called aviationfly.com. It's a digital platform which connects aspiring pilots with pilot training organizations all over the world. Since we started significantly dedicating resources and time towards it towards the end of 2019. Since then, it has become one of the most visited platforms by aspiring pilots from around the world, with over 70,000 visitors every month, aspiring pilots from all over the world. And since we had built that platform when the pandemic hit, we saw that quite a few pilot training organizations around the globe were really affected. And we knew this because our initial platform, aviationfly.com, was connected to so many of them and tracked so many of them, because that platform started off as a directory of pilot training organizations in the Asia Pacific region, Middle East and Africa, and since then has grown to cover the whole globe. So when the pandemic started, we saw that pilot training organizations around the world were really affected by the pandemic, and that in different countries, different pilot training organizations were utilizing different solutions to stay up to date with or to adapt to the pandemic. And so our team, we had that overview in terms of what different pilot training organizations were doing. And so we wanted to share that with our network to help as many pilot training organizations as possible. And so as aviationfly.com, we started doing a weekly industry update, which covered a lot of these different developments or different ways that pilot training organizations were adapting around the globe, as well as what we also wanted to do with all the negative coverage, media coverage that there was out there, with all the negative news. We felt that it was quite good to look for positive developments or shine a spotlight on the positive developments within the industry, and then also share that with the pilot training industry and aviation industry professionals to provide them also with a sense of that even though the pandemic is severely impacting this industry, the aviation industry, that there were still plenty of positive developments that were happening. And so from those two areas, we then were quite active on LinkedIn. We were sending out a weekly pilot training industry update to a network of around close to 400 pilot training industry leaders. And we were doing both these things, one on LinkedIn and one through aviationfly.com and through kind of a distribution list, which was quite personal and that we had. And so since we had both these things and both of these things were quite well received by the wider industry, we decided in 2021 to build a platform to better cater to this specific solution or to this specific value that we were providing to the industry. So in the middle of 2021, we decided to start building the AFM.aero, the backend, so all of the digital infrastructure surrounding it. And it was quite challenging as the whole industry was affected by the pilot training industry, so were we. And but thankfully we have a fantastic team in place. We have a really great partners within the industry which have supported us since the start of the pandemic, and which is something which we'll not forget. And so we were able to build these platforms through the great team that we had, the wide range of services that we're offering, and through the great industry partners which have supported us throughout this pandemic.
Yeah, I definitely agree that people still need to be reminded that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's amazing that AFM.aero provides that for its audience. A while ago, you already mentioned that through AFM, people will be updated to the latest developments in the pilot training industry. What about its other benefits? Why should people subscribe to AFM.aero?
Yeah, great question, Paula. So AFM.aero specifically, we have three sorts of key elements to the platform. The first is the market intelligence section. So this is a section where organizations or individuals who are interested in the pilot training industry or operating in the pilot training industry can stay up to date with the latest trends and developments within the industry. And under the market intelligence section, we have a freemium section, so which is kind of content which we post every single day which is available for everyone. And then we have a premium section as well, which is where pilot training industry professionals, be it suppliers or flight schools or simulator training centers, can get even more content and can see a wide range of very specific things which are happening within the industry, which includes also analysis that we do on specific organizations and specific countries. And that is under the premium section. So this is really for individuals and organizations which are operating in this industry, which want that edge, which want that knowledge edge to really find out the latest things that are happening within the industry. The second pillar under AFM.aero is that we have mapped out the entire pilot training infrastructure globally, so both flight schools and simulator training centers. And we've done this now. We're now in the third year of doing this. We actively track and see, okay, how has the pandemic affected the number of flight schools around the world and the flight training capacity that they have. So this is really the second vertical, which will also go live very soon, where we will provide organizations or individuals access if they would like to see, okay, what is the flight training infrastructure in a specific country, what are the latest trends that are developing towards it. And then our third vertical is really advisory services. So in advisory services, once again, pilot training organizations or individuals can get access to our expert advisory services covering a very specific range of advisory fields, which is mergers and acquisitions. So if an organization is looking to buy or sell flight schools or simulator training centers, they can contact us. Or digital advisory, so where we work with flight schools and simulator training centers, or even suppliers on optimizing their digital infrastructure, their digital marketing activities, or more generic advisory services in terms of optimizing the operations of a flight schools or simulator training center, or doing a growth strategy for one of these organizations, or market entry strategy. So these are specifically the three different pillars. But I think the thing which will interest most of the listeners or viewers for today is our market intelligence section, which is where, as I said, organizations or industry professionals or anyone interested in the pilot training industry can stay up to date with the latest trends and developments within this industry.
So say someone is interested to subscribe to the market intelligence, how should they proceed? Who should they contact?
That's once again a great question. We are digitally quite active, so there is a number of ways to contact us. One can email us info@afm.aero, or visit our website AFM.aero and then use the chatbot that we have, or contact us through LinkedIn. Paula, I know you and myself were quite active on LinkedIn, so anyone can search for Paula Abanes or Maximillian Buerger, and I'm sure we will pop up quite at the top of the LinkedIn searches. Or once again on YouTube, we're building out our interview series on YouTube as well. So this will be both available to listen via podcast and to view it via LinkedIn. And so through all these different methods, people can contact us to learn more about our platform, to get a presentation about everything that we do, everything that we cover, and to specifically speak to us to see how we can add value to a specific organization or an individual.
Thank you, Max. I will also put a link of our social media accounts in the description box, and also instructions on how they can avail the premium subscription on AFM.aero.
Yeah. What I would say is, Paula, so specifically the premium section that we have, if anyone is interested to contact us, and to, we will speak with organizations and individuals and try to understand, what they are looking for, kind of what information or what edge we could potentially provide to them with all of the information that we gather and that we track. So if anyone is listening who has a specific interest, please contact us, and we will show you, we will understand what your immediate need is in terms of information that you're looking for, and then we will see if this is something that we can address, and also share with you some of the content and analysis that we have.
Thank you, Max. So for the last question, what is the view of AFM.aero to the future of the pilot training industry?
So what we noticed in the pandemic was, one, that there was a lack of information which was being shared between pilot training organizations. So pilot training organizations and leaders of pilot training organizations from around the globe were quite interested to know what was happening in other parts of the world, and which is how we kind of developed this whole platform. From speaking with leaders of this industry, we saw right at the beginning that for the foreseeable future, a large part of the pilot training industry would be adapting to the effects of the pandemic. And that because of the nature of the pilot training syllabus and pilot training nature, with pilot training taking a minimum of 12 months to get a commercial pilot license, and maybe up to 3 years, and depending on where you are in the world and what training organization that you're with, that the effect of the pandemic on the pilot training industry was only going to be seen after quite a long time horizon. So already in 2020, because of all of the research that we do as AFM.aero, because of us tracking the global flight training infrastructure, we quickly identified that there was going to be significant long-term effects on this industry. What happened was, immediately, when we look at this industry, we look at the demand side, so demand for pilots, and then the supply side, the training of new pilots, which go into the industry. And on the demand side, we saw in 2020, and then even a bit in 2021, just the demand for pilots just evaporate. So airlines around the world were significantly reducing the number of pilots that they needed to operate, the significantly reduced fleet. And I think, if I remember correctly, at one point, more than 50% of airline pilots were unfortunately not required by the different airlines. What we saw was that this demand cratered, but the flight schools still had students which they enrolled before March 2020, kind of when the pandemic started. So from at least discussions that we've had, a large number of students continued their training. So they didn't actually break off their training because they had already committed a large amount of funds towards it. And what that meant was that the students which enrolled in the last part of 2019, start of 2020, continued their training, and most of the time only finished their training in 2021. So quite a few flight schools right at the beginning were affected by maybe lockdown, so they couldn't operate, but they still had a good number of schools still had a good number of students to allow them to continue operations. That whole kind of scenario changed in 2021 as more and more students were graduating. And that's when flight schools really started to feel the effect of lower enrollment numbers. The second big factor that we have identified was that from our database, from us having mapped the global flight training infrastructure, we know that more than 70% of all flight schools in the world are in developed nations, or what is classified as developed nations, but that 87% of the world's population lives in developing nations. So, which is why also historically we've always seen aspiring pilots go to places such as the US, the south of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, for their flight training. These are very popular pilot training destinations. Now, those countries most of the time also had government support packages, government bailout packages, which helped flight schools kind of weather some of the pandemic. But what we've seen, if we take an overall picture, is that globally the flight training infrastructure has shrunk. So there's less capacity to train new pilots than there was in 2019. Flight schools over the last 2 years also have taken in less students, and I'm talking about a global picture. So in certain countries and in certain schools, actually, they might have seen an increase in enrollment, but those are the exceptions to the rule. Or they might have seen an increase in enrollments, but a lot of it is focused of individuals doing private pilot license training. As an overall picture, we've seen a reduction in flight training capacity, and we've seen a reduction in students starting their pilot training. So aspiring pilots starting their pilot training due to the pilot profession being less attractive, right? Because there's the uncertainty, okay, will I have a job after I do my training? Will there be another wave of the pandemic where, maybe I get a job and then I'm laid off again, right? The pilot profession is for the most part really suffered in this pandemic. Pilots all got salary cuts or were laid off, right? It wasn't as attractive anymore for new pilots for aspiring pilots to start their training in the last 2 years. Additionally, as I mentioned, right, we've got this mismatch where most of the flight schools are located in these specific countries around the world, but most of the world's population doesn't live in those countries. And historically, people from those countries have always traveled to these locations, which once again wasn't possible due to travel restrictions around the globe. So what our prediction is of the future, kind of factoring in all of these different components that I've just mentioned, is that we will see a significant shortage of flight training capacity around the world. It is not yet seen. But if we track this industry, we kind of, the way this industry moves in the waves is that we always knew that as airlines are ramping up again, as demand increases, demand for airline increases much quicker than the supply side can. So then the new pilots can kind of feed into the system. So the demand has once again increased. Thankfully now we're coming out of the Omicron wave. Airlines are ramping up again. They're currently rehiring a very large number of pilots that they had let go, but there's also a lot of pilots which have left the profession, a lot of pilots which have retired. So as airlines kind of go through and rehire as many pilots as they can, they will come up, they will also kind of push all these or train all these pilots again on the simulator training infrastructure around the globe. Now, the simulator training infrastructure around the globe has already recovered extremely quickly, especially in places like the US, North America, and in specific sub-segments of the industry where there's a lot of demand, such as business aviation and the cargo segment. Now, we're already seeing this increase in demand for simulator training. What we will start seeing, or what our prediction is, that towards the end of 2022, but especially in 2023, that's when there will be huge demand for flight training capacity again. So already now we're starting to see a few airlines relaunch their cadet programs because they see that in order for them to get new pilots, once they've gone through and rehired everything that they can rehire, they can't be reactive, because if they get to that point, where they've gone through everyone that they can rehire and then they need new pilots, well, to train a new pilot will take a minimum of 12 months. That actually airline pilot takes, or for someone to be qualified as an airline pilot takes significantly longer. And so we will see more cadet programs emerge, especially towards the end of 2022, beginning of 2023. And we will see this global demand for flight training infrastructure, because there's been this reduction in capacity around the world. And I don't want to take up too much time. I think what I would highly recommend is for people to get in touch with us, for people to subscribe to our industry updates that we do, to subscribe to this podcast and interview series, because it's a very broad topic, and we've done a lot of analysis on this, and I could talk about this for hours, but our plan is to kind of do this pilot training leadership interview series to speak with individuals operating within the sectors from all across the globe, to specifically address topics such as how different people predict the pilot training industry and the demand for pilots will develop over the coming, next couple of years. But in our view, once again, is that the effects of the pandemic, while they were quite visible on the airline, or on the airline sector and on the demand for pilots, the effects of the pandemic have not been, the long-term effects of the pandemic have not been as visible from the pilot training, on the pilot training sector, and the full damage that the pandemic has done on the sector will only be visible over the next 2 years, once we see, okay, how much has this pilot training infrastructure reduced across the globe?
Just one question, Max. As you said a while ago that the pilot career is not that attractive to aspiring pilots anymore because of the pandemic. When we say is the like not perfect, but when is the most strategic time for aspiring pilots to start their training, since like it's for sure that the demand for like flying will come back.
Well, I think the one thing that we've learned, and I know Paula, you especially have heard this numerous times from me, I'm always very optimistic, and we fully believe that the demand for flying, the demand for pilots will come back. And we were very optimistic in 2020, and then we were hit by the Delta wave, and then we were very optimistic in 2021, and then we were hit by the Omicron wave. But it feels like, exactly like you said, we believe that the demand for flying and for pilots will significantly bounce back. And it feels like now that we're finally coming out of it after the Omicron wave. Through our platform, aviationfly.com, we get aspiring pilots from all over the globe really speak with us. And when there's still, as much as the pilot profession has suffered in its appeal of being of interest to the younger generation, we still see that people are passionate about it. And so for anyone who's listening who is an aspiring pilot, we can only recommend that now is the perfect time to speak to pilot training organizations to see what the options are, because what we are seeing is that airlines are significantly ramping up. they are rehiring. And in different parts of the globe, we're seeing this at different speeds. For example, the US and North America is just going crazy, where you know, every 2 days you see an airline CEO saying, oh, we are cutting down routes because we don't have enough pilots, because too many pilots have left the profession because of the pandemic. We predict we will see the same pattern emerge at different levels of intensity, really across the globe, because so many people have left the profession, because so few people have gone into flight schools over the past 2 years. And so we really recommend, if anyone is interested, who is listening to, who is interested to become a pilot, now is a great time to speak with pilot training organizations. Now is a great time to sign up with us, to visit AFM.aero. We're updating it on a daily basis. We are covering airline cadet programs. So whenever we come across an airline launching a new pilot training pathway program or cadet program, we're covering it on our platform. So industry professionals or aspiring pilots can find it on our platform. So now is really a great time to kind of pursue that passion. What I will maybe share with you, and this is something which we've discussed quite in detail. So for everyone listening, Paula is the person who's managing all our social media platforms and engagement and activity across multiple different platforms. And we track a lot of different data from the industry in terms of visitors to flight schools, websites around the globe, social media activity, or everything that we do. And one interesting feedback that we've gotten from the industry is that in a specific, in North America, the cost of customer acquisition, so the cost to enroll a new aspiring pilot or a new cadet pilot, has actually doubled since the start of the pandemic. So even though in North America, there's huge demand for it again, it has also become more challenging to enroll cadet pilots. So, and this is once again something which we'll cover in our interview series. So Paul and I will discuss this separately, but once again, for anyone who's listening who's an aspiring pilot, now is a perfect time to speak to pilot training organizations and kind of get their view on when would be the perfect time to start your training.
Thank you, Max, for your wonderful insights and for introducing AFM.aero to our audience. Do you want to mention anything else that you haven't said yet a while ago before we end our episode?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I've learned in this pandemic was that sharing of information or helping others is really something that helps build long-term relationships. So something that we did right throughout the pandemic, we put a focus on, our number one focus was on helping as many people and organizations as we could. Everyone was going through an immense amount of pain and suffering and negativity. And so we made it a focus that even though we are a for-profit organization, that, you know, over the past 2 years, our number one focus was to help as many individuals as possible. And that was only possible for myself and our platforms to do due to the great team that we've had. So I just want to take this opportunity. I know we're launching this pilot training leadership interview series and podcast, which is something, by the way, which we did at the beginning of 2020, where we did 10 episodes. So anyone can check out our YouTube channel and they will see the first, I think, 10 interviews that we did right at the beginning. But I want to thank the fantastic team that we've had for staying optimistic, for kind of staying together and allowing us to build these different platforms. And then to specifically thank also our industry partners. So we've had pilot training organizations, suppliers, simulator manufacturers, pilot training industry suppliers, which have worked together with us, which have supported us throughout the pandemic as well. And this is something which, will always be remembered, right, for the people who've stuck together when times were difficult. So I just want to say a thank you to those organizations and to those individuals and to our team. And yeah, as I said, we're now reactivating the leadership interview series, which is something that we did at the beginning of 2020. I wish we would have continued it, but we're going to do it now. We're going to try posting on a weekly basis. So, and if anyone is interested to be covered, or if anyone would like to be part of this interview series, once again, please contact us via email, info@AFM.aero, or via LinkedIn, or via any of the methods of reaching out to us.
Thank you to Max, and I definitely agree with you with the importance of information. Like the more information you have, the better decisions you will create. Mm. So I think that's the end of our episode for today.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. It was a pleasure. I know for you it is also the first time, right? So
Yeah, it's also a learning experience for me.
yeah, I know your area of expertise are, in search engine optimization, LinkedIn, YouTube. So it will be for everyone listening. We say, please bear with us. This is once again something new for us, and we will look to continuously improve this as we go along.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks to everyone who listened to our podcast for today. If you want to learn more about AFM, please visit our website at AFM.aero or connect with us on our social media accounts. We are super active on LinkedIn, so if you want to be updated to the latest pilot training developments, follow us. If you enjoy our show, be sure to come back next week for another informative episode with one of the leaders of the pilot training industry. Thank you again, Max.
Thank you, Paula.